Hello, I'm Hayden.Bloomfield and welcome to the channel. So in this video I want to run through the one book that taught me about artificial intelligence, that can teach you, to give you an understanding. If it's something that you're interested in, you want to know more, dive into the details of the story of AI, the journey we've come on, what barriers there are into the world of AI or even artificial general intelligence, what different sectors and different universities, individuals have done for the industry, for the sector, what its capabilities are, as well as many other questions have been answered all through this book. That book is Melanie Mitchell's Artificial Intelligence, A Guide for Thinking Humans. It's a really great book. I really enjoyed it. I want to go through in this video why I read it, what the key benefits I found from reading it, what my favourite parts were, and also what I felt was missing from the book, what could be included that would have made it a better reading experience for me. So let's dive in. Firstly, I found this book, The Where. So I came across this quite serendipitously when, in a previous video, I mentioned about having a catch-up recently with an old friend. We went to a local town near me, Rochester, or actually local city. Anyway, we went to Rochester. On the high street, there's this store called Store 104. And it's kind of, think of like small-time Waterstones. They've got lovely little bookstore upstairs. They've got all sorts of different kind of small-time business artisan products of like different artworks and such. They've got a lovely little coffee shop at the back. I've actually never had coffee in there, note to self. And in exploring the store, I went along upstairs and found this book. This is the first book, so bearing in mind I'm doing a review video here of this book, but it's the first book I've read on artificial intelligence. However, I have read a lot of books on business development, personal development, all manner of non-fiction, factual, informational, educational books. And from that standpoint, I could definitely give a good review in terms of was this a great book or not. Yes, it was. Diving into why I read the book, as you may know, I'm interested in emerging technologies, and especially a key component of future tech will be in artificial intelligence and more life-changingly artificial general intelligence. And within this, Melanie goes through a whole depth of what the journey of AI has been, where we're sort of targeting to go as a species, what has been done within that realm, and what barriers there are, as well as going through lots of questions at the end herself in terms of the big questions around AI. So I read it hoping to get a much better understanding of how artificial intelligence works. I'm not a computer person, don't really know how they work all too that well. I'm very creative in my mind, and I'd say hold a basic level of intelligence for many things, and just the way that I can understand and take in information, I would say, is that. I will say that when I entered into this book, I'd been watching videos on artificial intelligence, so I had a bit of an understanding, and obviously, if you don't know, I'm an avid fan of Tesla. I'm a huge Tesla fanboy, an Elon fanboy, so I've always been quite interested in the sector and have really tried to gain as much information on artificial intelligence as I can, mostly through scouring YouTube. So this is the first book. But what I really enjoyed is just the journey that Melanie was able to take us through in terms of I would say it's very easy to understand. It's something that if you don't really have much of an understanding, like as I said, I'm not a computer person, I don't really understand anything, and yet by reading this, I completely understood what was going on. There is some bits, one thing I will say, if you're going to read this book, I highly recommend, if you're going to read it, it's more of like a study book. It's not, so like while I'm reading this, I'm reading two books at the time. I'm reading this and I'm reading Fern Cotton's Bigger Than Us book. Very different. One's very casual, much conversation type of dialogue, and very easy to read. There's not too much of like brain power used. It's just kind of quite creative outlet. Whereas this is like full on brain power. So when I read it, I was studying. It didn't feel like I was just reading, but then it's not a storybook and it's not something that's that casual. It is, we're talking about artificial intelligence here. So it is something I will say, be prepared, you're gonna study. And it took me quite a while to read the book just because I would read over a lot of bits. And sometimes when you are reading a book, you can skim over sections and you realize that your mind wanders and you weren't actually paying attention to what you're reading. However, with this, you have to pay attention to everything you're reading, and if you don't understand something, you will need to reread it. And like I love, like I've had this for like a couple months and it's like basically destroyed, but I love the idea of really putting your own touch on a book. And so like I always underline key things that interest me, and through the whole book I like was just underlining so much that I was drawing on that was just really drew my attention and seems such a profound piece of information that I need to just be able to go through and find those pieces quickly. Problem is I underlined half the book. So great job there, Melanie, you got me underlining everything. What else is, there's so many diagrams to work with, visuals to help you give an understanding and put it in simple terms. And not only that, it's really relatable into like real life scenarios. So Melanie dives into, I say dives into a lot. Anyway, Melanie really goes deep into finding ways to talk about artificial intelligence applicable to our day-to-day lives and the tasks that we do, and various different chapters where it breaks into different industries, especially as well, like what does it look like for the future of work and how it will be impacted. The visuals as well, the diagrams that are in use, little sneak peek, I don't even know if I'm allowed to do this. Visuals like this where they're all annotated, it's very easy to understand, very basic, provincial, but it's written in such a way that it flows really well and you understand really well. And I'd say it's almost, there are a lot of like sort of story-ish components to it where you are sort of following this story, this journey. And so that reads really well and it's really pleasant. And I can't stress enough the point of how something so complex was put into such comprehensible language. So easy to follow, so easy to understand. As I said, there are bits that you have to reread over and really study them. Some bits I had to read like 3 times just to really grasp what I was like understanding. But it's given me such clarity over artificial intelligence, how it works, the key structure of what it is that computers are doing, how computers translate information into code and so on, whether that be speech, text, and how they gather or don't gather an understanding. So it's opened my eyes in terms of when we think about the problems within the world that people are trying to solve with artificial intelligence. I now have a much clearer understanding of what the barriers are and why they are. So for example, with Tesla and full self-driving, I can see more about what the barriers are to getting to like level 5 autonomy. So if you don't know what level 5 autonomy is, then check out, I will try and remember to put a card in the corner of my video. I explained the 5 levels to autonomous driving, 6 if you include 0. I like the way it was structured as well, the journey we went through, and the fact that there's key components that you need to follow in the book. You need to read the book chronologically initially, but then she breaks it down into different sections through the chapters of different components of how it's impacting our lives and different components within the artificial intelligence industry, which you can then just read at your own leisure, whether you want to read it chronologically, I always do with books, or if you want to do section by section, or if there's certain things that you just are not interested in, you can just skip entirely. So that works really well, and then at the end, rounding it up with kind of a conclusion, a nice flow to it, as I said. But what did I find was missing from the book? And I do want to stress, like, it was a really amazing book and I really did enjoy it. The only thing I think that I would say, but this comes down to subjectivity. This is just based on my own personal preference. If you read it, you may have a different opinion. And if you do read it, let me know in the comments below. But one thing I'd love was if Melanie went into some of the like bigger companies using artificial intelligence, thinking like Tesla, Amazon, Apple, and really dived into sort of more around their artificial intelligence structures, what they've got, what projects they've got undergoing. She did do this, like there is a lot of information in there, but I suppose it would have been cool to have a more deeper dive into specific companies, just to give an understanding. So like where I'm very interested in AI, I have a clear understanding of like what Tesla's doing with that, how that can be applied to humanity and how it will benefit humanity. I have a bit of an understanding when it comes to like Amazon, Apple, Microsoft and such, but I think it would have been really cool to have, I mean, admittedly that might not necessarily be what this book's about, but just to have like a chapter on Amazon, a chapter on Apple, a chapter on Microsoft, a chapter on Tesla, and other AI companies I don't know. Maybe even a sort of quick chapter just going into some more basics of companies that are involved in AI. I feel like that's one thing that I would love to have got from the book that I didn't necessarily, was the companies that are in the lead of AI or that are investing heavily in AI. But I will stress there is components of that, and there is a lot of talk about different AI projects within like Google and such. Did I list Google when I listed the companies? Either way, Google should be on that list. Melanie does also go into other companies that are working within the AI realm, but I feel, yeah, just a chapter that goes into each big company individually and breaks down what their AI projects are and how they can be impacting the world and what they'll be looking to achieve within the future. But also, yeah, as I said, some companies that are just smaller but involved in the AI space. That would have been really interesting. But I can't really call it much of a critique. I remember when I got the artwork, when I picked up the book, I was like a bit weirded out by this and was like, what's the point of that? But then I assumed it'd have something to do with the book, and then you read through and you find out exactly why that is the colour. Overall, definitely recommend reading. If you are interested in artificial intelligence, literally this is a must read. Like the first thing you need to do, go grab this book, read it, it's phenomenal. The depth of which it goes into, like I generally feel like I could walk into an office of AI experts, I could sit down and I could understand their discussion. I wouldn't be able to like contribute too much. And like, I've read this book once, so I'm not at a point, while I underlined a lot of information here, I'm not at a point where I could where I could incept a conversation about artificial intelligence, whereas if someone was to talk to me about it, I would pick up the keywords and be like, that's what it is. Whereas off the top of my head, I can't think of it. I'd probably need to read it another 2 or 3 times, because I'm just like trying to remember off the top of my head just like key terminology and what it meant, and I cannot remember. But I know as soon as I see the word, I'm like, that's what it is. That's the word I can put my mind on. But I would love to see more books from, because this is one thing as well, like this book is from a few years ago, because that's one thing I did pick up on, like where I'm so infatuated with Tesla, I study, especially the full self-driving, I'm studying that and keeping up to date with it. So going through reading the book, there's a lot of information there that Melanie points out about the barriers with full self-driving, but she's talking about Tesla back in like 2015, 2016, and since then, Tesla's just gone on this huge journey, which I don't doubt that many other companies, the Google, the Amazon, the Apple, and so forth, have gone on as well. So I'd be really interested to see in like Artificial Intelligence 2, like part 2 guide. So that would be really interesting to get more of an update. But then again, that's not what this book is. It was an introduction to artificial intelligence. But I think it's the kind of thing that Melanie could do like once every 10 years. I mean, there is reference in here of like projects from decades ago that would still be relevant today because we haven't managed to achieve them. So in some regards, AI has come a long way, and in some regards, it's really not come far at all. I think one thing that would be really phenomenal is to have Melanie come on my podcast, Benevolent Business, when I relaunch it. So if you ever end up watching this, Melanie, then there's an invitation there. Would love to have you on the podcast and really dive more deep into the impact of AI in terms of how it impacts us as a species, the world, technologies, and how that could be a positive or a negative, and look at what, in a lot of detail, how that could really have an impact on us as humanity. So I hope you found it helpful. Maybe it's encouraged you to buy the book, maybe it hasn't, but if you are interested in artificial intelligence, I mean, if you're watching this video, you clearly are, get it, have a read, it is phenomenal. I will point out this is not an ad, like, look at the views, there's like no one watching this video, so clearly no one paid me to say this. But yeah, really good book. Give it a read, and if you've felt that I've done a good job at reviewing, please make sure to like the video, hit subscribe to get more content around some books that I'm reading. I'll do some more reviews on them, as well as more on ethical wealth, sustainability, business, the environment, sustainability. I've said that. Anyway, till next one, bye.